and welcome to another episode of Explore. And I will be focusing on the matters of my book, Global Justice. I talked about the Swedish uh, society and how that uh, works with the book. And when I focus on the matters of linguistic and how to articulate it is to acknowledge how social aspects is uh, interesting when it comes to my uh, work on justifications. I derived a lot of uh, awareness and thought. I think it was the case for me in being uh, alert with the decision and concentrating on how progression is useful. I mean, everyone wants to obey the law and be in a uh, constructive uh, perspective. When it comes to the field of empirical investigations, it is to adhere to unity. My main aspect here is how the activity for sustainability is useful when it comes to the frames of uh, global challenges and continuity. And my main message around the, let's say, social structure, it's to follow a guide and to be in a proper management. I think when it comes to the discourse of policies, we have to assure legitimacy and concordance. And how can we do that? Why are our lives significant in the stance of rule of law, democracy, and regimes? This is to avoid pathologies and other somatic disorders, to acknowledge why ledger of content is useful, and to bring that into performance and execution. When it comes to the chapters of my book, I focus on the quest for civil and human rights, and that is a work which I wrote about the democracy and to underline the meanings of uh, acquiring rights. It is a fundamental aspect of livelihood, and it's the case that can uh, be in management. Why do I say management? I think it is a way to collect wisdom, uh, assurance, and pinpointing issues. I think within the book I analyze a lot of constraints which can be inclined towards uh, progressive remarks. And it is the availability of that can be taught and can dispense from uh, good attributes, from denied falsehood. I think when it comes to acquiring the rights, we have to construct the basis of units. And it is done by performing and by analyzing the social structures. It doesn't come like uh, a piece of paper. It needs hard work and preparation. Uh, for me, it was to recognize the social and economic disputes and how to solve them in more proper way. And I think when it comes to the rights of society, the government doesn't tell you as a citizen you have those duties. As a person, you need to educate yourself to perform these obligations and to support yourself in households and other incentives, which has a sociological meaning. And many institutes doesn't allow you to govern those behaviors in a good way. It shies away, and agencies are collecting money much more paper, possession, and many of those commercial investments. So, as a citizen, especially when you're black, as I said earlier, they call the black uh, diabolical. That in itself is a reaction, and it needs to be uh, analyzed through many parameters, and only the black color is disliked. I think in Italian they say dispiace, and I think that's a relevant case, and it's topical because it shows where maturity is around the well-educated white people and how they incline towards secular initiatives, bad behaviors, condemnation of racial rights. So this all connects to the course of monetary union, equality of opportunity, and the standpoints on how to transforming a society. So I think those are very influential in the aspects of conjunction and treaties. I think the notion of evil exists within the society, whether you're aware of it or not. But I think it's a well-known concept because it can really be antagonistic if it's not dealt with it in a fair way, and it can lack this type of puissance and uh, règle because of those hardships. And I think it's appropriate because of those tensions within climate and urban situations. As a political scientist, it's for me convincing to examine these structures because not only in my literature but in other existing literatures, it is to differentiate what's useful from the beast, and that also exists. It's called in Arabic that so it does exist too because these have a significant aspects on why religious narratives is a part of the educational field. And for me, I think when it comes to the black collar, it needs to be elevated in a more structured way. And when I studied in school, I got a lot of meanings in the class, and they assist me with uh, rules and the applications of work. And for it helped me in thriving because there wasn't many hatred towards me, and but many people could be downgraded for their immigrant background, and it caused a lot of issues, and it lacked this type of meaning because when a student got an A on a essay and the other student got E, there was some unfair uh, judgment between them because the immigrant was also in a more equity, and he had the stance on having the good, getting the good grades, which the other one didn't got, and because they both had the potential, but the other guy was undermined because of his ancestral heritage, and so they are not total fair in those decisions because of the strange land we people live in. And people will favor their own type of ethnic prowess instead of going to other cultures. So this is obviously, and for me, I could flip through those obstacles. I knew how to counter those task obligation, and it just helped me in uh, communication with other people. Uh, it's not about how smart you are in school. It's about how adaptive you are also in other circumstances. And so there is those type of traits which are necessary. And within the book, I talk about the enlightenment of migration and ethnicity. It is the section which describes on how social function enacts with the world. And it is a fruitful description of how to drive up uh, reasonable approach and to follow this type of uh, um, unities. I think it is a case that can be taught and inspired in many different ways. And some part is the part of the individual sovereignty, which is a interesting phenomenon in how we as a species got duties from God and to serve them. And I think there is a verse in the Holy Book of Quran that says, وَلَا تَزِرُ وَازِرَةٌ وِزْرَ أُخْرَى. No soul should bear the burden of another soul, which is uh, explanation of the character of an individual. And I think it's the personification of literature and judicious thought, how to uh, excel in those uh, content and inspiration. And also that it means the missing the mark too, which can cause, let's say, the global climate to ignore, and that's it's a relevant story, and the denial of truth, which is uh, an aspect of how to highlight the constraints within opinion, and therefore it needs um, confrontation because of how, let's say, massive population acts towards an individual. So I think that needs to uh, be confronted and to assure the rights of that. And it does exist because of how people behave in our social society and why it's relevant to not stay quiet or to do nothing. And those are some of the aspects that can affect the demographic scope, and especially if there is no movement, and therefore it needs consideration of that perspective. And I think, but the case of the black man lacking those uh, traits and cannot uplift some of the moral uh, and rational aspect, it is an obvious fact because when you live in the Western world, you are interfering in an international structure, and it is how to affirm those judgments in a more appropriate way, and to promote fairness is one of those elements that needs uh, work. I think when it's the case of sovereign value, we have to deal with the uh, aspects about democracy and Western jurisdictions. And I think it does have those participation and their part of uh, unequivocal approach. For me, it was to analyze some of the content in more precise way because it needs the evaluation of processes, institutional premise, and the aspects of uh, demise. When it comes to the uh, global justification, it is to form a righteous pattern which can be incorporated with other people. So when I focused on, for example, the Somali diaspora, I want to highlight the meaning in an international context because where I can work with other partisans and to be national in my standpoint, and that's essential because I cannot work with an ethnicity I do not understand because I don't know their culture and other um, incentives. So it would be foolish to do that. And for me, it is a way to strategize labor and other uh, base characters. I think having traveled a lot in Europe, I gathered experience and in the stand on democracy, rule of law, and unity. I am a social democratic uh, person who admire the qualities of impartiality, and I wanted to derive meaning with social justice and equality. For me, it was to travel and see the poor neighborhoods in society and to work for rights, to elevate hope, and to see why people are struggling in those areas. And the hatred towards religion and affinity. So for me, it was to form a conscious mind which enacts with laws, institution, and bureaucracies. And I think it was the case of unveiling injustices, and it is with a joy for my work that I want to signify. I think when it comes to the social initiatives, it is part of recognizing legitimacy within the state, that theoretical and practical parts are inevitable because they have a consist way of uh, activity and can deny derogatory. For me, I think the foreign policy is a theme that use methodological approach, and it can examine some of those issues around the social structures and can be useful in the democratic uh, participation. I think chapter 3 in enlightening the migration was crucial for the diaspora movement, and by adhering to the grassroots within the city of Borao in Somaliland, where I reside and where many of my relatives come from. It is the framework of uh, unity and commonalities. So I didn't want that to be neglected because my African roots still is useful for determination. And I think it's the case that can be in affirmation with international law and European law. And I think analyzing those constructs can have a equality for legitimacy and constitution. What I do is to discover challenges and opportunities. I think it's a case to reform uh, yourself because Malcolm X taught us about a man who stands for nothing will fall for anything. I think that's a quote that still resonates with people and which still have affected me in a positive way. But I think it's another case also where Shakespeare talked about, and he said in a famous quote, to be or not to be, which I think which is an immense claim on livelihood and how to behave in a social society, especially living in the Western world. And I think it's a huge part of a man's life. And it's a case that can determine those characteristics in a delightful way instead of shying away. I think it's my proponent in doing decisions in life, for example, cleaning the room and doing much of those uh, obligations because we have those tasks to fulfill. So I'm going back to chapter one, the activity for sustainability and global goals. It does form on how to behave in the social paradigm, and it describes a lot of the implication on justice, for example, on the ecological part, on the social part, and on the economic section, which I think it's interesting and can also bring much to the table when it comes to ledger and formalizing content because many agencies use a sense of data to detect uh, uh, issues. And I think it's relevant and it can be more of a position on uh, the progressive marks. And I wanted to conclude that everything I do matters in the stance of uh, global hierarchical part. And when it comes to those aspects, it can use how the diaspora movement is a key for understanding diplomacy and rules. Within the political aspects, it is how uh, intergovernmental organizations can work for um, unity and respect. Because, for example, World Health Organization focus on the part of good health, and they want to highlight the continuity for resources and eradicating pathogenic behaviors or other pathologies which exist, which I think is useful and that can be inclined towards happiness, which it's also uh, a joyful moment where people can consider it as a moment for being with their relatives and other targets. But for example, there are many within the medicine faculty virus and spread of disease that exist. For an instance, the Ebola crisis, it hit a lot of uh, citizens in Africa, and it spread fastly in those territories, and it caused issues for the developmental scope, and it was more of a top-down process where it needed statistical analysis to cope with injustices and those dogmatic changes, and which I think was interesting in the sense of prestige and the health organization to promote uh, fairness, and which is a part of the religious discourse, which many people doesn't tell you. And especially when you're black, you need to fight more and to understand why they are pouring uh, contradictions towards the black male. And I think it's a fact which resonates with the power of social institutes, and that she can also um, have meaning in those uh, affirmation when it comes that she can uh, discover the disease in a more appropriate way that can undermine hostility. I wanted to conclude uh, a verse from the Quran, which can be useful for this segment too. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين عما يتساءلون عن النبأ العظيم الذي هم فيه مختلفون كلا سوف تعلمون ثم كلا سوف تعلمون ألم نجعل الأرض مهادا والجبال أوتادا وخلقناكم أزواجا وجعلنا نومكم سباتا وجعلنا الليل لباسا وجعلنا النهار معاشا وبنينا فوقكم سبعا شدادا وجعلنا سراجا وهاجا وأنزلنا من المعصرات ماء سجاجا لنخرج به حبا ونباتا وجنات ألفافا إن يوم الفصل كانت ميقاتا يوم ينفخ في الصور فتأتون أفواجا وفتحت السماء فكانت أبوابا وسيرت الجبال فكانت سرابا إن جهنم كانت مرصادا للطاغين مآبا لابسين فيها أحقابا لا يذوقون فيها بردا ولا شرابا إلا حميما وغساقا جزاء وفاقا إنهم كانوا لا يرجون حسابا وكذبوا بآياتنا كذابا وكل شيء أحصيناه كتابا فذوقوا فلن نزيدكم إلا عذابا إن للمتقين مفازا حدائق وأعنابا وكواعب أترابا وكأسا دهاقا لا يسمعون فيها لغوا ولا كذابا جزاء من ربك عطاء حسابا رب السماوات والأرض وما بينهما الرحمن لا يملكون منه خطابا يوم يقوم الروح والملائكة صفا لا يتكلمون إلا من أذن له الرحمن وقال ثوابا ذلك اليوم الحق فمن شاء اتخذ إلى ربه مابا إنا أنذرناكم عذابا غريبا يوم ينظر المرء ما قدمت يداه ويقول الكافر يا ليتني كنت ترابا. Thank you for you have listened.